Hello and welcome to Paul on Politics, our regular review of all the week's political news and events live on KMTV. It's tempting to say that it's been business as usual in the political world, but that would be to say that a normal week involves a second ministerial resignation, new allegations against the de facto Deputy Prime Minister and Ashford MP Damian Green, and a defiant Dover MP Charlie Elphick claiming he still has no idea why allegations against him have been referred to the police. So, to try and make sense of it all, we've called on Professor Tim Luckhurst of the Centre for Journalism at the University of Kent and the editor of the Medway Messenger, Matt Ramsden. Thanks to both of them for coming in. Ashford MP Damian Green made his first public appearance in Kent since being embroiled in the Westminster sexual harassment scandal. He was at the unveiling of a statue marking 10 years since the opening of the high-speed train depot, which comes amid the latest string of allegations of behaviour by the first Secretary of State.
The message at today's HS1 10th anniversary conference was one of reflecting on the past and moving forward. For one of the keynote speakers, however, it's been a fortnight he won't be keen to look back on. It was the Ashford MP's first public appearance since becoming the centre of an inquiry into allegations of inappropriate behaviour in Westminster. The Prime Minister's second-in-command has also denied claims of inappropriate material being found on a computer in his Commons office during a police investigation in 2008 and 2009. Mr Green has denied the allegations as a political smear, and when KMTV tried to talk to him about the HS1 anniversary and the claims made against him, he declined. On stage was also a number of leading figures in the HS1 project, which they said had transformed Ashford over the past decade. None more so than in the slashing of the time taken to get from the East Kent town to central London. 37 minutes now from the 83-minute journey time back in 2007.
We've seen 129% growth since the first full year in operation of 2010. So it's been fantastically successful in terms of bringing more and more people on to use the railway.
The first Secretary of State in his speech, however, was keen to highlight the success of HS1.
The high-speed rail has been the biggest and best thing to happen to Ashford.
While the HS1 event will come as a welcome distraction for the Ashford MP, he heads back to a Westminster and indeed a Downing Street that to some seems to be slowly going off the rails. This is Cameron Tucker for KMTV in Ashford.
Well, Tim, there's all sorts of puns we can make about the government being off the tracks and derailed. How serious is this situation for the government?
I think it's extremely serious, not least because we've seen the resignation of a very senior cabinet minister in Priti Patel, the second to go in the course of a week following Michael Fallon's resignation, and a sense that Theresa May really isn't in control of her own government. And that really matters because the government is going into the next round of Brexit talks next week, and one of the big decisions the European Union has got to make is this a government that can actually deliver on any deal it reaches with the EU? Or will they negotiate a deal and find that Theresa May can't persuade her own party to support it? I think that makes it a really serious issue.
And Matt, there's a sense in which there's a certain paralysis in the government. They can't do anything at the moment, so they're stuck in these negotiations. Is Theresa May a diminished figure after the recent events?
I think so, Paul. It's starting to feel very much like the major years. That slog between 92 and 97.
Well, let's give John Major some credit because he was at PM for 7 years after all.
He was, but very different circumstances. And I look at Theresa May now, and I was taken by the fact she didn't do the morning shows on Sunday. She sent Amber Rudd out to do the hard work, and I think she's in serious trouble.
Tim?
Well, that's absolutely right. She said Amber Rudd out to do the hard work during the general election campaign as well, and she's falling back on the Home Secretary once more.
But the party doesn't want another leadership election, does it?
Well, I wonder whether the Conservative Party might soon reach the conclusion that perhaps a leadership election would be the right thing. After all, if Mrs May still had any authority whatsoever, she would have lost her Foreign Secretary this week as well. Boris Johnson's conduct in his comments about Mrs Ratcliffe, the woman held in Iran as essentially a political prisoner of the Iranian regime, were quite appalling. He has potentially risked the possibility that she might face an additional prison sentence. Now, the only reason Boris Johnson is still in office is because Mrs May lacks the political capital to sack him.
Well, that was the question I was going to put to you, Matt. I mean, he's in a sense unsackable. Boris Johnson
is looking like that, but Boris being Boris, there's going to be something else that comes along, and she's going to have to do it, you know, even though I suspect that's what he wants.
OK, well, let's hear from Kent's only Labour MP about the atmosphere at Westminster and her views on inappropriate behaviour from fellow MPs.
I think it's really sad and really disappointing in 2017 that we're still talking about sexual harassment and that women aren't feeling safe at work. You know, that's disgraceful actually, and we need to stop it and put the things in place to make sure it doesn't happen again, or that people feel safe when they're reporting those kind of incidents. Well, we need to look at that cross-party and how we deal with it as a House of Commons, so all staff from all parties, whether they're working for an MP or working in the building, feel safe, feel that they're taken seriously, feel they've got somewhere independent to report to if they've got any problems or worries or concerns. We need to make the whole process transparent. We need to start again.
Well, Tim, another development last night, Charlie Elphick issuing a very defiant statement. He's, of course, been referred to the police over some allegations. He says he doesn't know what the allegations are. And doesn't that tell you something about the state of government and the state of politics?
Well, I think not just about the state of government, but the state of both political parties in response to the panic over what we might call our modern sleazegate, the allegations against MPs of having inappropriately related to members of the opposite sex. So we've got Charlie Elphick saying he doesn't know what the allegations against him are. Remember, we've also got in Wales a former minister in the Welsh Assembly, Carl Sargent, committing suicide because he said that the Labour Party didn't tell him what the allegations against him were. This really is an absence of natural justice. Here in Kent, there's a bit of a crisis. I mean, Charlie Elphick, yes, the whip suspended. We've got Michael Fallon from Sevenoaks, resigned as Secretary of State for Defence, and we've got Damian Green, MP for Ashford, still with a shadow hanging over him, although he's denying everything emphatically.
Matt, what's your take on this? You know, in terms of the implications for Kent, it does seem that Kent has a disproportionate number of people involved in these various allegations, which I have to say they all deny, obviously.
Absolutely. It's crackers, isn't it? It's just crackers. The Elphick situation where he doesn't know what he's done wrong is just unbelievable. I've never known anything like it. Yeah, it does seem that Kent has taken the sort of shouldering the burden in this whole thing, but
maybe it's something in the water, Tim.
Maybe it is something in the water, maybe it's something in the national climate at the moment in politics. But I think one thing that we have to bear in mind is that Labour is not massively outpolling the Conservatives in national polls despite this chaos. The Conservatives are still running at 40% in the polls, and that is a quite extraordinary situation.
And that's interesting because of the comparison with John Major. In fact, you know, Labour was beginning to poll very well towards the tail end of their tenure. Anyway, let's move on to talk about another Brexit-related issue, and that's the money spent on the NHS. It was plastered across buses, posters and headlines that once we left the EU, there'd be £350 million back that could go to the NHS. This week, NHS boss Simon Stevens demanded the health service gets their Brexit cash boost, promised by the Vote Leave campaign during the referendum. The plea comes just 2 weeks before the yearly budget at the annual Health Managers Conference in a bid to grab the attention of Chancellor Philip Hammond. But was this just an empty promise, or did this actually impact on how people voted in the referendum? We asked shoppers in Maidstone.
Oh yeah, I definitely think it had an impact. I mean, I still think lots of people wanted to come out for other reasons, but the sort of money that they were talking about was for a good cause like the NHS. Most people would think, yeah, well, that might be worth going that way.
I suspect, yes. I do think that the NHS are very much in need of funds, but as I believe a lot of things are.
I think it was probably misleading because everyone thought it would go to NHS for the 350 million, but then it's just nothing's said about it. It's just been dissolved.
I don't think it caused too many people to vote because of that. I think it was mainly because of the influx from foreigners abroad. I think that was the main reason, especially around this area, Kent being close to the channel.
I've just heard about this today on the radio as it goes, because they're saying that they're going to put that into the NHS. Rubbish. Please, if you will, do it. I don't think that's why the Brexit thing was done, obviously not, but no, please put it in it.
Well, Matt, we know that the Medway Hospital Trust has had some fairly chronic problems over recent years. Do you think people did vote in the referendum with that in mind, that if they got out, we'd get lots of money to spend on the NHS?
Well, I think it certainly had an effect because it was such an eye-catching headline, wasn't it? 350 million quid a week is no short change. So I'm sure that was part of the package of why people decided to vote to leave.
In a sense, it was a very powerful slogan, wasn't it, Tim Luckhurst? It might have been stretching the bounds of truthfulness, but it was something people cottoned onto.
I think it was a very powerful slogan, but it's going to turn out to be complete nonsense. What the European Union most wants from British negotiators next week is a sum of money that Britain's prepared to pay to leave the European Union, and that sum of money is going to be a great deal more than £350 million.
Yeah, I mean, is your sense, talking to kind of hospital managers, that people were duped effectively by a false prospectus, you know, in this £350 million a week?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't gone into that much detail, and the hospital people I speak to are normally quite diplomatic and don't want to get drawn into politics. But the one thing they are frightened of is the staffing levels. I was walking around one hospital a couple of weeks ago, and I said, where do your staff come from? And it was like the United Nations. We've never seen anything like it, you know, every corner of Europe and beyond, and they're genuinely worried what's coming.
It's a separate but related problem, isn't it, in terms of the departure from the EU? Lots of uncertainty about the state of EU nationals, and that's going to have a real impact on workers who might think their future lies elsewhere.
A colossal impact. I mean, we're losing nurses, we're losing very, very highly skilled NHS workers from hospitals across the UK. We're also losing agricultural workers, hotel service workers. Britain has been using a lot of EU labour, and these people do not feel welcome, and they don't know what deal they're going to get when Britain leaves the EU.
OK, well, the uncertainty continues for some time, I suspect. Coming up on the show, we'll be talking to a Sevenoaks councillor about their new housing strategy that is trying to prevent bed blocking. And where's the happiest place to live in Kent? We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, and there have been no ministerial resignations in the break, so we're all safe. Now, we've recently heard about the number of bed days that are lost in hospitals because of problems with transferring them to care homes. Sevenoaks Council has designed a new housing strategy with a healthy twist, trying to shorten the time it takes people to be discharged from hospital, and even considering mental health counselling to help people deal with the burden of buying a house. Earlier, I was joined in the studio by Councillor Michelle Lowe, Cabinet Member for Housing and Health of Sevenoaks, to discuss the authority's plans.
Well, I think the main difference is it's almost a public health document because we've got a vision in Sevenoaks that if we were to combine all our tools together, licensing, housing, community safety, planning, we could actually, if they were all to work together holistically and strategically, we could really improve the health and well-being of our residents. But the most important place and the most important environment to us is our home. It's where we sleep, it's where we raise our families, it's where we spend most of our leisure time. So if our house is correct and right for us, then we will flourish. But if there's something wrong with our house, if we're overcrowded or underoccupied, or it's damp, or we're in a lot of debt, or we're at risk of losing our home, our well-being will suffer. So we've linked public health and housing as a sort of a major key of what we want to do in Sevenoaks, and that's why it's called Wellbeing Starts at Home. Well,
tell us a little bit about how this is going to work in practice. What are people going to notice at the coalface, if you like?
At the coalface, we've got a number of schemes. One of them is our Hero scheme, which is a holistic advice service that gives advice to people to prevent homelessness. So before they've run up so many debts that they're going to be evicted, we could try and help them to get their debts under control. But we notice...
Is that a problem in Sevenoaks particularly?
Well, it is, because of...
some people might be surprised to hear that, you know, in Sevenoaks there is an issue around
well,
this.
House prices are so high that they're almost impossible to pay for. So, yeah, debt is a huge problem and one of the causes of homelessness in Sevenoaks because people get evicted. But we noticed that there was a correlation between mental ill health and debt, and so what we've done is we've upskilled our Hero officers with some health training so that they can understand those links better, and they're also now working outside of GP surgeries so that they can better understand, so they can deal with the causes of people's problems. If someone's stressed and suffering from mental ill health, it could be because they're in debt. So we'll deal with the debt while the GP can deal with the medical condition.
And what about the cooperation of other agencies? Because obviously that sounds like it's going to be key. I mean, are they on board with your strategy?
Oh yeah, I mean KCC commission Hero officers, our housing associations work with us with our Hero officers, and now we've got the NHS on board working with them. And what's great about housing is that we can deal with a lot of the causes of why people go to the doctor. So the doctor will deal with the medical symptoms, but they're not dealing with the causes, and that's why we're joining up with the NHS so we can deal with the causes of.
And you're talking about doing things while people might be in hospital for operations or procedures, and then want to recuperate back home, you're doing something slightly different to what some other councils are
We
doing.
have, yeah. We've got with Tunbridge Wells and Tunbridge and Morling Borough Council at Pembury Hospital, and also now 2 cottage hospitals, and now in Darrant Valley Hospital, and also the Livingston Hospital in Dartford. We've got a rapid hospital discharge scheme. So while you're in hospital, being operated on and recovering, we're preparing your home ready for you to come home. So that could be as simple as moving a bed from upstairs to downstairs. It might be fitting a rail or a ramp so that you can be discharged as soon as you're clinically ready, because the last thing you want to do is be in hospital longer than you need to be, waiting for your home to be ready. So we're doing that, but we've even extended that with the One New service, where we've got some housing advisors where we're going to work with GPs to identify people who are most at risk of falling and being admitted to hospital, so we can prevent that fall so they don't go to hospital at all.
Just one final question, if I may. You, like other councils, have been told by the government to potentially increase the number of new homes that are being built. Is Sevenoaks anxious about that?
No, we believe, although we're 93% greenbelt, we're still committed to protecting our greenbelt. We believe we can meet our housing needs on the 7% that's left. But what we want to do is make sure that we build the right kind of homes that our local people need, rather than building the homes that they don't need, which is what's happening at the moment. And we believe this is going to help us.
Now, residents fed up with the problem parking in Medway will now be able to report illegally parked cars to the council. A new hotline has been set up to let residents ring up and ask for parking attendants to come and ticket cars parked where they shouldn't be. Harry Pete has the story.
There's not much worse a feeling than coming back to your car and finding a ticket stuck on the windscreen. And now if you're parked in Medway, it could become even more common, as Medway Council announced that you can now ring their hotline to report an illegally parked car, and then a traffic warden will be sent out to sort it. The hope is that the new scheme will help to cut out those who are parking where they shouldn't be. Take this road in Rochester, for instance. There's double yellow lines, but the residents here have become frustrated with people parking on these double yellow lines or taking up spaces that are allocated for their home.
It is so frustrating that I've known people, and I'm not part of these people because I thought it was stupid. I've known people in the past that will not go shopping, will not go to the gym, will not go anywhere because they know that at a certain time in the daytime they're going to be losing their parking space. Therefore, they just rather not do what they are planning to do rather than losing a parking space. It's wrong when you stop having a life because you're afraid of losing your parking space. I mean, how wrong is that?
On the council's website, Councillor Phil Filmer said it is fantastic that motorists will be able to contact the parking enforcement team directly on the phone or by email. The new hotline will make parking enforcement even more responsive and will help to keep Medway moving. And those residents who live in parking nightmare hotspots agree it could deter the problem. But opposition say that the hotline isn't as accessible as it could be, with residents wanting to make a complaint having to call a mobile number rather than the usual 6-3s.
The council for years have tried to make people realise there is only one council phone number. You know, they've done a good piece of work on that, to be fair to the council. They're now adding confusion in by having a mobile phone number, which frankly is going to cost residents a lot to call, when for many people calling a local 01634 number would be free. So they're going to be putting people off of potentially reporting these incidents with the cost of a phone call.
The new hotline went live this week, and those fed-up residents will be hoping it can kick some of the parking pressure to the curb. Harry Pete for KMTV in Rochester.
Now, Matt, would you be a parking snooper and inform on illegally parked cars, or would you say good for them, they're escaping the penalty that the council wants to impose?
Well, I'm not sure I'd snoop, but I know they cause problems for certain people.
It seems it's an interesting idea, though, isn't it? It's encouraging people to snoop. I mean, my feeling was perhaps that people would report cars which weren't actually there and divert parking wardens' attention to elsewhere.
I hadn't thought of that, but maybe, yeah, it's a different kind of idea, and I wonder if there's a revenue aspect to it as well, because you know that local authorities by 2020 have to be self-funding, so maybe that's something they're looking at. Yeah, it possibly is. I mean, you know, councils are always saying they're strapped for cash, but you know, the issue of parking is always so contentious, isn't it? Where the amount you have to pay, the amount of time you can stay. Has Medway got the balance right, do you think? I mean, do you think you should do away with parking charges? That'd be a radical policy. It would be, but it'd be one that they'd have to find their money from somewhere else, and obviously they'll find that and someone else will be unhappy.
I mean, we often see in papers like ours, don't you, stories about parking. It does seem to get under people's skin, doesn't it?
Yeah, very much so, and more now than ever, because there's so many new houses being built. Every new house, they have people with 2 cars, and it's a massive problem, and it really does get under people's skin.
Yeah, well, you touched on an interesting, serious issue there, is the number of new houses coming down the way, and no additional space for any of the cars to actually travel, let alone park.
That's right, that's right. I mean, where I live, there's a couple of housing developments planned, and I was just looking out on the road this morning and thinking, I don't know where all the vehicles are going to go. It'd be a nightmare just to get out of my driveway.
I mean, do you think that councils are just tend to look at parking as a cash generator for themselves, rather than thinking what would be the sensible way to have a parking policy which would encourage people into the town centre?
Yeah. I think you've got to strike the right balance, because from my experience of dealing with councils in different parts of Kent, it can alienate shoppers. And they'll think, well, I'd rather go to a Blue Water and park for free and access those shops than go into my town centre.
Yeah, it does seem to me sometimes that councils are not enlightened enough about their, particularly around prices. You know, we've seen some kind of councils introduce, you know, cheaper parking rates on Sundays and in the run up to Christmas, but they're kind of small measures, aren't they?
They are. I suppose you could make an argument there's not enough sort of business-minded people going into council, going into the public sector. Maybe some people like that would be more innovative in their thinking.
I mean, what do you think about shopkeepers and traders? I mean, they're the ones who suffer if people don't come into town.
Yeah, they do, but they are the biggest complainers I've ever come across. Small traders, because I think they want everything on a plate, and I know, as I say from my experience, council and small traders are always banging heads.
Well, perhaps they should pedestrianise the whole of the Medway towns. That would be.
Well, that'd certainly be an interesting idea.
I was recently in Amsterdam, and you didn't have to watch out for cars. It was bikes you had to watch out for. Maybe more biking lanes is the answer.
I think in Rochester would be quite nice.
Okay. Well, talking about people feeling happy and not happy, is it really true that the UK has become a happier place since the vote to leave the European Union? New official data from the Office for National Statistics says that measured levels of happiness and well-being showed we are slightly happier in the 12 months since the June referendum. Nigel Farage, of course, is massively happy. Is this just a coincidence that we feel, well, apparently we feel happier since the June referendum?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure, but when I read the story, I thought it was April Fool's Day, because it's far from what I've experienced these last few months. I was saying earlier that these are probably the angriest times I've lived in.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? I mean, we see these divisions at a political level, but you know, the vote and the referendum was 48-52. So there's always going to be a lot of people unhappy about the outcome.
That's right. I mean, one of the lines you keep hearing from the Brexiteers is that the British people voted too, and it wasn't the British people. It was the majority of people who voted, and there's millions of people out there who are very unhappy about the vote.
Well, we'll see how that measure of index of happiness goes. We'll leave you tonight for the time being. Thanks to our guests for coming into the show and the studio. We'll be back very soon. In the meantime, you can catch up on all the latest political news in Kent by logging on to KentOnline.co.uk, listening to KMFM, or following me on Twitter @PaulOnPolitics. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon. Right, have a chat.